SAP has two initiatives, one called Grow and one called Rise, that are meant to accelerate adoption of S/4HANA. But are these programs worth it, and do they help S/4HANA implementations? That's what we're going to talk about here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys, including their SAP S/4HANA implementations. And recently, SAP has introduced two programs, one called Grow, one called Rise, that's meant to help smaller companies and established SAP customers migrate to S/4HANA. And a lot of times, organizations and project teams think that this is the silver bullet they've been looking for, and SAP is certainly marketing these two things as silver bullets to make SAP implementations easier. But the question is, are they doing us any good? Are they helping S/4HANA implementations, and what is it doing to the industry? That's what we're going to talk about today. And if you'd like to learn more about what it takes to be successful in your S/4HANA implementations, I encourage you to read our Guide to Successful S/4HANA Implementations. It's a guide that we wrote that's focused on our lessons from helping clients through their implementations, including companies that have failed in their SAP implementations and then hired us to come in and fix those implementations. So we share all those lessons that we've accumulated over the years in this guide, and you can read that off our website by scanning the QR code right here, or you can go to the links below. Let's start with SAP's Grow program. Grow is an initiative that SAP announced to allow and enable small and mid-sized companies to migrate to S/4HANA. It's designed for companies that aren't necessarily on a legacy SAP product, and it's designed for organizations that historically have been smaller than the average Fortune 500 large multinational corporation that was always more likely to deploy SAP technologies. So Grow is really a pre-configured way of allowing small and mid-market companies to leverage S/4HANA. And it's cloud-based, so companies that deploy the Grow program are ones that are moving to the cloud. So S/4HANA on-prem is not one of the offerings within Grow. It's primarily focused on organizations that are going to be moving straight to S/4HANA cloud. And this is, in my opinion, a pretty solid strategy. It makes a lot of sense for SAP to offer this because it's their way of moving downstream, not to abandon the upper market where they've always dominated, but to move downstream to start to compete with the NetSuites of the world, with the Infors, the Epicors, and some of the other mid-market players that have dominated the space for a long time. So Grow is meant to be a way for small and mid-sized organizations to accelerate their implementations and also to accelerate their speed to adoption. But as we talk about, and we'll talk about here later in this video, there's some limitations to what Grow can do, but that's kind of an overview of what the intent of Grow is. We talked about Grow, which is SAP's small and mid-market initiative to get those smaller organizations onto S/4HANA Cloud, but they also have something called Rise, which is actually designed for legacy SAP customers that are using either R/3 or ECC, or maybe even S/4HANA on-prem. It's a way to get these legacy SAP customers onto S/4HANA Cloud, which is really what SAP is trying to do, is they're trying to get as many customers as possible onto cloud because it's subscription-based, higher profit margins, more steady, predictable revenue, and investors love it. So SAP is smart to be going down this path of trying to make it easier for organizations to migrate from their on-prem legacy SAP environments into a cloud environment. Now, RISE stands for Realize, Innovate, Sustain, and Enhance. That's the acronym that RISE stands for. And it's really meant to provide a number of tools and process innovations and process intelligence and services to make it easier for organizations to move to S/4HANA Cloud. There's also a heavy managed service component of RISE. And what I mean by that is it's SAP's way of managing the whole back-end infrastructure and managing the applications for IT departments, so it entices them and makes it easier for them, in theory, to move to S/4HANA. So just like Grow, RISE 2 has a number of limitations. It's a good idea in theory, but there's some severe limitations and mismanaged expectations that go along with both RISE and Grow, and that's what we'll talk about next. So now that we understand what Grow and Rise are, the question is, are these initiatives helping S/4HANA implementations? And my view of this is that it is a great, brilliant marketing strategy for SAP to pursue these two initiatives, but the reality of the effect it has on customers, I would say, is a bit more muted. I think the reality of migrating to S/4HANA Cloud is that it's a very difficult transition. A lot of organizations haven't even begun their transition to S/4HANA yet. In fact, I believe the last metric I saw was over half of SAP customers haven't yet started their migration to S/4HANA, despite the fact that SAP has placed a deadline of 2027 as the last year they'll provide support for some of these legacy products. So it's this slow customer adoption that's causing SAP to create these initiatives to try to entice more customers to move to S/4HANA Cloud. And the reality is when companies move to S/4HANA Cloud, they find that it puts a lot of pain and risk in their operations. Not because there's anything wrong with S/4HANA Cloud, but because S/4HANA Cloud is a lot less flexible than some of the on-premise legacy SAP systems. If you look at the average ECC customer that we work with, and ECC is the legacy product that was before S/4HANA, most of those clients that we work with have tons of customization that they've built into ECC, for better or for worse. And untangling those customizations and getting the organization to adapt to less flexible, off-the-shelf, pre-configured solutions in the cloud is a lot easier said than done. These are big multinational organizations, diverse, complex organizations for the most part that are using S/4HANA, even though they are trying to move downstream with the RISE program, as we talked about. But still, most of the customer base that's been using SAP and is trying to move to S/4HANA are big, large, complex organizations, and it's harder for them to adapt to off-the-shelf cloud software. So might have fixed a problem in terms of providing infrastructure, managed solution sorts of offerings to SAP customers, but we haven't fixed anything as it relates to the really heavy lifting as it relates to ERP implementations of any sort. The hardest part of the implementation is not going to be setting up the cloud environment or moving to a managed service model. The hardest part of any ERP implementation, whether it's with Grow or RISE or any other sort of initiative, the hardest part is going to be transitioning and transforming your business processes to the new technology. It's changing your people to fit the new technology, and it's filling the gaps and filling the void left by the limitations of cloud technologies like S/4HANA. So Grow and RISE don't materially affect implementations in our experience. They sound good in theory. They do give you a tool set to help on the technology side, but it doesn't fix a majority of the problems that organizations have with S/4HANA implementations, which have nothing to do with the technology itself. It has more to do with the people and the processes and the internal alignment than it does anything else. I think the other challenge and limitation of both Grow and RISE is that it creates this false expectation with customers that it's going to be easier to migrate to S/4HANA than it really is. Again, I think it's more of a marketing message that we want to hear. It's not necessarily rooted in any sort of reality. In fact, I haven't seen a material impact on S/4HANA implementations as a result of Grow or RISE. So I think the lesson here is it doesn't hurt. Grow and RISE are good ideas, and they can help accelerate certain components of the S/4HANA implementation. But the reality is we still haven't figured out a way to make it easy or easier to go through the operational changes, the process changes, the people changes, all the stuff that goes into a project on the non-technical side, and Grow and RISE do not address that. So the reality here and the lesson, the takeaway is no matter whether you go with Grow or RISE or some other accelerator that SAP might provide, S/4HANA implementations are difficult. S/4HANA implementations are highly likely to fail, as are other types of non-SAP ERP implementations. So it's important that you not go in with a paranoid mindset, but go in with a realistic mindset of what it's going to take to make your implementation successful. Understand that there are real risks in the implementation, even with Grow or RISE, and you need to mitigate those risks. You need to identify the risk, mitigate them, and you need to be realistic about it. And you can't just stick your head in the sand and say, well, because of Grow and RISE, I've mitigated my risk or I'm going to speed things up materially, because you're not. So we just need to make sure that as great of a product S/4HANA is, we just need to make sure we manage through the risks as well. And if you'd like to learn more best practices on how to make your S/4HANA implementation successful, I want to share with you a couple resources. One is our guide to successful S/4HANA implementations. It's packed full of lessons that we have from helping so many different clients throughout the world with their S/4HANA implementations. You can find that guide on our website by scanning the QR code right here, or you can go to the links below. I also encourage you to check out our podcast, where we talk about Grow and RISE, among other things related to the world of SAP, and the podcast is called Journey to S/4HANA. You can go to journey2s4hana.com to find that podcast on YouTube. You can also subscribe to it at journey2s4hana.com. You can subscribe to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, etc. So lastly, if you want to reach out to me and brainstorm ideas as it relates to your S4HANA implementation, if you want to get a sanity check on whether your implementation strategy is accurate or bounce around ideas related to how you're implementing the product, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to share our team's experience with helping so many companies with their S4HANA implementations. I've included my email information on the screen below, or you can go to the links in the description field below. So I hope you found this information useful and hope you have a great day. But is it worth it? Does it help?
That's right.
Yeah, I stuttered.
Kind of stuttered.
Now, RISE stands for
What does RISE stand for?
Realize, Innovate, Sustain. You can find that by reading.
It's okay.